Hello and welcome to Camp Xbox. Tony Hawk is one of those franchises in the 6th generation that dominated. It was the definitive extreme sports franchise and had some hits on the Xbox. We have gone through all of the games in the series on this channel up to this point with Tony Hawk's Underground 2. This one is a big one for me since this is one of my favorite games and one of my all-time favorite franchises. It's a perfect way to celebrate 100 total original Xbox reviews on this channel. I replayed it recently, and I'm going to give you a review along with its history and lasting impact. All footage was captured from an original Xbox, and as a note, all licensed music had to be removed for copyright, so all gameplay is matched with my own music with the custom soundtrack support of the Xbox. I want to thank all of my YouTube channel members for their support, and let's go ahead and hop into this one.
In case you're wondering why Bam and I invited you here tonight, let us enlighten you.
World Destruction Tour! Around the world sick as hell skating competition that Tony and I threw together and you, Jagoffs, are gonna compete in.
Continuing after the release of the first Tony Hawk's Underground, that game was both a critical and smash success. The ability to create a skater and have a more fleshed out plot led to a breath of fresh air for the franchise. This game was a top seller in 2003, and Activision reported high sales that quarter along with releases of Call of Duty and True Crime Streets of LA. In January of 2004, the sequel to Underground was announced. Yet this story about the history of this game wouldn't be complete without talking about Bam Margera and Jackass. A moment in time you honestly had to be there to understand. Bam Margera was a pro skater who quickly became a name for himself in the late 90s by releasing the CKY series. It featured stunts, pranks, and skating, and captured an edgier side of skating. His popularity blew up, and he even got his own TV show in 2003, as well as being a member of Jackass. Jackass is a show and film series about people doing stunts, pranks, and generally getting hurt. At that time, he quickly became the most famous skater in the world next to Tony Hawk. He had been in Tony Hawk games up to this point, but in this entry, his popularity would lead to him being a major character in the new game, riding against Tony Hawk's more straight-edge appeal. In an interview, Neversoft would say, Bam personifies a segment of skate culture that crosses over into the overall youth culture. Since we told a more serious story last year, we thought Thug 2 needed to be more fun and to get a little bit crazy too. Along with him, various members of the Jackass crew would join in on the game and give this entry a destructive feeling going across the globe. While researching the game, the team from Neversoft trekked the globe and researched to display the locales they wanted to accurately. All of this came together to make a game that personified the year 2004 in a time capsule, a Tony Hawk game mixed with Jackass. Tony Hawk's Underground 2 would be released in North America on October 24, 2004 for the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox, and drop a few days later in PAL regions. It would also get versions on the GBA, PC, mobile phones, and a remixed version on the PSP. For my personal history as a kid growing up, this game meant a lot to me. I loved Jackass and I thought it was the funniest thing, and I obsessed over it, and I still love watching Jackass to this day. I remember watching Viva La Bam and playing Tony Hawk, so when a new game was announced mixing two things I loved, I was all in. 2004 and 2005 was defined by this game, and I still play it once a year. This one is a nostalgic hit for me, so I will admit this review has an inherent bias. I did try my best to look at this game objectively this time when I played it, but a game you know extremely well is a bit harder to tear yourself away from. So I wanted to give you that warning before we got into this. However, I did fully play through it again recently, and I tried to look at it from a little bit different of a perspective. And I do think I have some new insight into this game. And let me break down my feelings on this game for you, starting with the plot. This Tony Hawk serves as the following plot entry in Underground, taking the same protagonist from that game and seeing where they go next. Tony Hawk and Bam Margera have kidnapped you and a bunch of other skaters. They plan on taking everybody on the World Destruction Tour. It's a skating competition across the globe where you do gnarly tricks and destroy the cities to gain points for either Team Tony or Bam. Members of Jackass like Wee Man and Steve-O join the teams, but an important character from Underground makes a comeback, Eric Sparrow. If you recall from my last review, I hyped up Eric Sparrow as one of the best villains of the 6th generation. He is the right mix of pompous, silly, and traitorous to make a perfect, hateable mix. He's back here, but the hate isn't quite the same. Still annoying, he lacks that traitorous touch to be as compelling as before. It's more of an annoyance, and he quietly slips into the background. This game opts for a new villain named Nigel Beaverhausen, a lame TV personality that everyone makes fun of. Once again, it's more annoying than hateable and pops up randomly in the middle of the game, becoming the villain. It pains me to say, but in terms of story, Underground 2 is a step back from the first game. Underground has a plot that is everlasting and relatable, a rise from the bottom to the top, to the bottom, back to the top, that feels like something generational. Underground 2 feels more topical and of its time. Not that that's a bad thing, if anything it serves as a great time capsule, especially for someone who lived through the era. It might not work as well for someone who is either not a part of the zeitgeist or didn't grow up then. As for me, I enjoy the cartoonish quality of the plot. There are elements like a Sasquatch coming on and wrecking trees, or the Wheel of Loogies, a wheel you spit on to decide the loser's punishment. It's goofy and a little amusing. It's a game that doesn't take itself too seriously, and I don't mind that. It does enough to keep the plot light and fun. I like how the plot of the Destruction Tour leaks into the level's goals. You might have to dress as Beaverhausen and upset the locals. Or in New Orleans, it's become haunted and you have to trap the souls that haunt the area. Outlandish? Sure, but it makes the entry stand out as something fantastical. That is to say, with humor comes jokes that fall flat, and that happens here. Also, the plot can be a bit predictable, with teams winning and losing at the right moments, and when all hope is lost, you equal out your points. So I think out of the many significant elements of this game, Underground 2 isn't excellent as far as plot goes. But is it fun? Yes, it's a good time. For a game themed around skating and dudes hurting themselves, it doesn't need nuance. It just needs that entertainment factor, which it has. Just don't expect something quite as well done as the first Underground game. Up to this point, Underground 2 is the smoothest playing Tony Hawk game. Skating feels excellent here, and how you transition from move to move is fantastic. At its core, it's an amalgamation of the best elements of the series. You have your usual button presses that correlate to moves. You use ollies, manuals, and reverts to connect these moves for combos and transfers between ramps. It holds on to the great controls of the last game, as well as getting off the board and climbing, which feels smooth here. Also, the addition of the sticker slap is excellent. This has you slapping off areas and continuing combos in new directions or just doubling back. This gives combos an extra layer of fun, and mixed with the excellent control, this game continues to be a perfect arcadey blast. In this game, you get multiple modes to play in, but the World Destruction Tour is the biggest. This is the story mode that has you completing goals in a city, and once you complete them, you move on to the next city, culminating in Skatopia. You have both sick and normal difficulties, with sick requiring you to do more challenging goals, and completing more goals to move on versus the normal difficulty. Both are well worth doing and fun, with many goals to complete in each city. The way they handle goals in this entry is one of my favorites in the franchise. It has you hopping off high places, doing combo rushes, specific moves off of weird ramps, and more exploratory experiences. They all end up being fun challenges that ask you to learn these levels, and it's rewarding to find all the secrets hidden around you. I don't know how controversial this statement will be, but this entry has the best levels in the franchise up to this point. These levels are expansive but not massive. You explore these detailed levels of nooks and crannies, and it's never overwhelming. The locations picked are laid out to make for perfect lines to skate on, and so much attention is paid to verticality and everything being fun to skate with. Barcelona has to be one of the most perfect Tony Hawk levels ever made in my eyes. The bridges that you can grind and jump across, which even has a goal to make it across the bridge without touching the ground. You have these giant ramps in the back that are excellent for comboing. There's also Germany, which has this church to destroy and the buildings to grind your way to the top of, and a piece of the Berlin Wall to skate on. There's so much fun filled into each area of this game, and it's not only these levels, but all of the levels. I could go over all day just how good these levels are, but there's not a bad one in the mix, and it's one of the strongest level lineups in the series. A mix of fun goals, great gameplay, and incredible levels makes for a game that has a replayability factor like none other. Going through each one and checking out everything it has to offer and doing it over and over continues to be rewarding after playing it. One element that I don't love is the mechanical boards. In each area, there are multiple skaters to swap between, and they have specific goals. They use things like go-karts and motorized wheelchairs. They play fine, but take a bit away from the skating action and aren't as smooth. They aren't bad though, and I would gladly take these instead of the shoehorned in cars from the first Underground. Usually these guys have simple goals, so you don't stick to them as long as you're skaters, so it's not a detriment. That being said, at this point, if you consider story and gameplay, I think both Underground titles are on par with each other. But what gives Underground 2 the edge over Underground is the classic game mode on top of the story mode. The classic Tony Hawk playstyle is back for this entry, and it's fantastic. This mode has you moving from level to level doing classic styled goals. You have skate letters, getting high scores, and doing small tasks in a 2-minute time limit. I love classic Tony Hawk, and it feels great with these smooth controls, and you get to do them in some of my favorite levels. And on top of that, they throw in classic levels in here too, so it feels like a mix of new levels and Tony Hawk's greatest hits. It's a welcome and great addition that makes it feel like you get 2 games in one, which makes it a full package. Not only that, you get a bunch of creative modes as well. You can create your skater, make stickers, and make your own skate park. They don't bring anything amazing to the game, but it's a fun diversion. What's interesting is the create a goal, which has you making your own goals in user-made levels. One element I see no one talk about is that this game has a ton of pre-made levels with their own goals hidden away in the free play section, which are hard as nails, but it's another fun thing to look at in this game. As usual, there is also multiplayer, which has your usual horse and score challenges we've seen before. It's all fun, but I know many were disappointed that Xbox Live was not a part of this package. That being said though, Underground 2 is a fantastic game to play. It feels good, has excellent levels, has 2 game modes in one, and it's a game that has tons of content, and it's fun to play and replay. This entry is insanely entertaining from start to finish. Before we move on, I want to say thank you for watching this so far. I really appreciate it. And if you're enjoying it, please leave a like as it really helps me out in the algorithm. Subscribe to keep up with more content like this, but let's go ahead and move on. An essential element of any skating game is its soundtrack. The Tony Hawk series has been dotted with classics that define the game. Superman defining the first entry and being the biggest example, but most defining songs fall into rap or punk categories. Rock classics represent this entry, making it stand out, but also great. Specifically, I'm thinking of Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash and Break On Through by The Doors. 2 songs that I feel like they'd be in a Guitar Hero over Tony Hawk, but work so well here, capturing a world tour of music, especially when you dig deep into this one. I think it has an excellent variety of artists all around. You have Less Than Jake, Jimmy Eat World, Joy Division, and more from punk. From rap, you have Handsome Boy Modeling School, the Sugar Hill Gang, and this game introduced Aesop Rock to me. I'm only scratching the surface here, and this soundtrack has hit after hit and it's one of my favorites in the series. Not only that, but this game supports custom soundtracks, so you can listen to whatever you want. It uses music burned to my Xbox hard drive, and I think that's a great way to experience the game. The game does feature a heavy amount of voice acting, all from pro skaters. They do a fine job as usual, but nothing extraordinary. They're here more for authenticity over excellent performances, which is an angle I respect. And even though Bam isn't fantastic here, he's at least fun, which is all I can ask for.
It's beautiful. So beautiful. My life finally has a meaning.
The sound effect work is all there as well, with sounds of grinds and ollies feeling authentic. I enjoy the added sound effects of pulling off special moves and slowing time when getting focused. This game is full of special audio touches that work well with the game's atmosphere. It's a fun world to skate in because of the sounds of the boards and voices on the street, and you get some fun, silly, cartoony sound effects. It plays up a silly style that makes everything mesh well together. Underground 2 continues the trend of Tony Hawk games on the Xbox looking visually clean with a 720p HD support and widescreen. The fidelity here rocks, and though it's not a realistic game, it ends up being one of the cleanest looking releases on the console. I think Xbox's support of HD makes for some unmatched quality games of the era. However, I would say this game does its job visually, but it isn't fantastic. Character models are a little lacking, and I wouldn't say it's the best of 2004, but it does look good. There's also visual glitches like characters T-posing in the streets and sometimes even your skater. Something I keep bringing up is the cartoony quality, and this one trims away realism, and I think it works with the goofy Jackass style. It allows the game to have a silly vibe and a stronger color palette in many areas. What may be lacking with the characters is made up for in level design and look. These levels across the globe are iconic and emblematic of the area in which it takes place. As someone who hasn't been to many of these places, I can imagine them in my mind's eye from media that I've seen. I've also seen some reference photos, and what they have here is insane. The colors are great, and every level has a different mood, from the beaches of Australia to the coldness of Berlin. This game has a visual identity that makes excellent playing levels fun to look at and memorable. It makes for a game that might not be the best looking of its generation, but it is strong enough to have an identity to make it stand out and be memorable. Replaying Underground 2 recently reminded me why I love this game so much. It's a smooth playing skating game with perfect controls that make it endlessly fun to play. It has an incredible soundtrack that complements the gameplay and excellent level design. Though it has some glitchy graphics, it still has a fun, cartoony identity. Though Underground has a strong plot, this one has a throwback and silly vibe that I still appreciate. As a fan of the series, it's hard for me to deny how I feel. I initially thought Underground 1 would be my new favorite, but something about the levels and goals and the classic mode make this even more replayable. My love for this game still exists, and trying to look at it more objectively, I still think it's a blast. I can't deny my feelings with how much fun I had during my whole playthrough. It's hard not to love. I highly recommend this one. I know this is against the grain, but this one is going high. Just know that this ranking is my opinion, and we will all differ, but I can't lie about how I feel. Underground 2 enters at number 4 on my original Xbox ranking list, and this is the 100th game that I fully reviewed on this channel. I put it above Underground because the level design and goals are better, and the addition of classic mode is impressive. I do, however, put Project Gotham Racing 2 above this one because Project Gotham Racing 2 has a lot more content and is a definitive racing title of its generation. If we were ranking just the series on Xbox, this is what it would look like. All are good games to me so far, but for me, Underground 2 is the best of the bunch so far. It feels like an amalgamation of everything good about this series so far. Tony Hawk Underground 2 came out to generally favorable reviews on launch with an 83 out of 100 on Metacritic. You will find a lot of 8s, 9s, and 10s, with some places like Game Informer loving it, giving it a 9.8 out of 10, but most sitting at 8 scores. IGN gave it an 8.4, saying it was smartly designed, but not enough new elements were added. GameSpot gave it an 8.2, saying it's a strong skateboarding game, but it's too far removed of the gameplay of the classics. Official Xbox Magazine in their December 2004 issue gave it an 8.7 out of 10, loving the story and customization, but hated that there was no live support. This entry would sell well enough to receive a Platinum Hits Edition and a Greatest Hits Edition on PS2. At the time, I remember the hype around this game being high and other kids I went to school with loving it. However, there's a good amount of people who didn't love it as much as Underground, a sentiment that can still be found to this day, with Backlogged having it at a 3.8 out of 5 with almost 6,000 plays versus Underground's 3.9. Some do love the game and consider it the best in the franchise in their views, but others find the plot lame, which is understandable. And of course, you have people that think the classic versions are the best versions of the series, and I think everybody's opinion is valid. Both Underground games will forever be at war, and I guess I'm more of an Underground 2 guy. Even though today I know a lot of people play the user mod, Thug Pro, which takes the incredible gameplay of this entry and puts it into every Neversoft Tony Hawk level and more, which I haven't tried it yet, but I am very interested. This one ends here. It's another hit for Neversoft, and it continues to be a yearly franchise. Soon after this, we will be chugging right into American Wasteland, so I'll save the development of that one for the following video. But that does wrap it up for today. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. It really helps me out in the algorithm. Subscribe to keep up with the retro Xbox content. Comment below with any Tony Hawk memories. Love it or hate it. Everybody's opinion is important. And I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube channel members. Thank you so much for your support. And I'll see you here next time at Camp Xbox.